Damn. Damn, damn, damn. I think I just finished what may be one of the greatest pieces of fiction I have ever had the pleasure of experiencing. And I'm so sad it took me so long to getting around to doing it. Is a phenomenally written story with so many fucking twists and just unexpected events, happenings, whatever you want to call it. Oh god, I literally just finished the game, took a piss, sat down, started recording. Man, I am in awe of that experience. Let me be clear, I tried to play the game when it was still newer, and it's not that I didn't enjoy it, but the first time around that I tried to play it, I was making content on it, and the slog of sitting there and recording the game for an hour or so, and then immediately turn around and start editing and having to listen to my own commentary in it, which, if you don't know, I don't like the sound of my voice. So, listening to my own voice over a decent game, but something I also just watched all happen and experience, it pulled me out of it. So I didn't ever finish it. My first time through, I finished Ellie's 3 Days in Seattle, and that was as far as I got. And I really didn't think I was missing much else. I thought I got pretty close to the end of the game, and I was always pretty disappointed that I fell off. I didn't know how much game I still had left to go. I was probably, 9 or 10 hours in at that point, and I don't even know how many hours I ended the game with. It didn't tell me. I wish it would have, but I know when I started today, I was at 15 hours, and that was around the point where you leave the hospital as Abby, if I remember correctly. I don't know. I grinded today, but I got some notes. Very basic notes for this one. I just kind of had little chapters of the game that I wanted to talk about. For those of you who aren't familiar, I understand that the footage that you're seeing is not The Last of Us Part 2. Duh. Okay? I don't know what fucking footage I'm going to use yet, but it's clearly not The Last of Us Part 2. No. I'm not moving my whole console over here to record it for whatever amount of time and then move it back to my big ass TV. I'm going to enjoy the experience as I could, and I'm not going to fuck around with it. Also, I think if I fuck around with my desk too much, it might fall apart. So, you're fine. If you haven't played the game, go play the game. And if you have played the game, then you know what I'm talking about, and you don't need to complain. Without further ado, let's get into it. When the game starts, you cannot deny just how beautiful it is. That opening scene with Tommy and Joel, that horseback ride, it's a stunning visually, and I have the original release. I still have it on disc and everything. I don't have any of the upgraded versions or anything like that. I don't even have the PS5 version. I have a PS4 disc. And as the game's going, keeping fresh in memory that the end of the first game wasn't as positive a note as Joel and the player might have hoped or expected, with Ellie asking Joel what the truth was about what happened at the hospital, and he lied to her, and she said, okay. And obviously, at this point in the game, we had no fucking clue what had happened or transpired in the years between them. I think it's a 5-year gap between 1 and 2? I don't recall off the top of my head. But I consider the beginning portion of the game to be everything before Ellie and Dina's arrival in Seattle. And that whole experience, it's quick in hindsight and long in the moment, which I know sounds kind of dumb to say, but when you're playing it, you're like, man, this kind of feels like it's dragging on a little bit. I want to get to the main part of the game, and then by the time you're done with the game, you're like, holy shit, the beginning was nothing. That went by quick. You get to meet crucial characters of the story. Dina and Jesse, they're 2 new additions that weren't in the first game. You get to meet Maria. I don't remember if you meet her in the first game, to be quite honest with you. I know that's probably bad of me, but I haven't played the first game since I think the 20-teens, so you'll forgive me, alright, because I said so. Ellie's 3 days in Seattle are phenomenal. Absolutely great. It's interesting playing someone who plays so similarly yet so differently to the protagonist, Joel, of the first game. Because obviously you still use listen mode and you're still crafting and sneaking and everything like that. But even the way that she moves, the way that she fights, granted, game mechanics are just going to evolve in a sequel, but also it feels like the character, she put herself into it. The way that she dodges, the way that she sneaks and reaches around, she doesn't do the same shimmy dance that Joel did. Everything feels very Ellie, where the first game felt very Joel. And getting to play through Ellie's hunt that urge, you know, even though she seems tame for most of the time while she's sitting there talking to Dina and when she's just generally doing her thing. She's aggressive, sure, but she seems fairly tame in comparison to what we see when it comes down to the moment, like when she corners Nora in the hospital, or when she fights Owen and Mel. Like, Ellie's fairly well composed, I would say, in comparison to what she's harboring inside. It's just super interesting. And then that very real reaction that she had to Dina being found out to be pregnant. She's like, well, you're a bother now, or a burden now, aren't you? And it's like, yeah, that was a harsh thing to say. And I don't think Ellie would have said that when she was in her right of mind. But she's stressed, you know? They had just fucking been through a lot, and just before that moment was like that big ass chase scene in the parking garage with all the fucking infected. And on top of that, they're still hunting Abby. She's still mourning the loss of Joel. They're trying to find Tommy, yada yada yada, all this shit, right? So it's a pretty bad moment for that to come up. So naturally, Ellie responds poorly, and being that her father figure for the most part is Joel and how he handles these emotional situations, it made sense as well to consider that she did not handle it well. She just kind of walked away from it. But anyway, you know, Ellie's 3 days are super interesting as well, because as you are playing, you're hearing tidbits about Abby and the others, and you're trying to piece it all together, and you just very clearly aren't getting the full story. And I like that, at least in my playthrough of what I noticed, there wasn't really, like, you know how you could pick up those documents that had, like, little tidbits of stories about non-main characters and everything, but none of them ever hinted towards what Abby and Owen and all of them were up to. Or at least none that I found. It always was just miscellaneous characters. So it's not like you could even try to piece it together yourself. So the player has a very odd sense of disconnect. You don't necessarily feel it because you're so carried by the thorough storytelling and the just encompassing story itself. But when you stop and think about it, you're like, damn, it's kind of weird. There's really just nothing other than every now and then we hear a little something about what Abby's up to. And then finally we get what I would say is roughly the middle of the game, where Abby just shows up out of fucking nowhere. Now in that moment you can't see Lev, or at least if you could, it couldn't have been very much, because I did not notice him at all in that moment. I was so focused on what the fuck was going on. Jesse just got his face fucking blasted. Tommy was on the ground. We had no idea what was going on. Abby just all of a sudden appeared in our safe haven right as we were gonna fucking leave, of all things. Then we get to play Abby's 3 days, and I'll be honest, I didn't know what to expect, because all I'd heard was a buddy of mine who said that all he heard, so not even experience because he hasn't finished the game, but he heard that the Ellie side of the story is peak fiction, absolutely 10 out of 10, and Abby's side of the story is kind of just meh. I'm gonna be honest, I have to disagree. They did, in my opinion, a phenomenal job at telling Abby's story in a way that very quickly got me attached to the character and invested in what was going on. I never forgave her for what she did to Joel, but I understood it. I never forgave her for how brutalized she killed him, but I understood the pain. As we traveled through Abby's 3 days almost felt longer than Ellie's in the beginning combined, just because it was all so new and you were learning so much all at once. Now, I think Ellie's part of the game is actually longer, but still, you know, playing as Abby's felt more. Not that Ellie's side was lesser. And anyway, I still loved Ellie's side of the story so much. But playing through Abby's side was interesting because it was a whole new character. You were organically learning a lot, you know, about the backstory and about the current situation, what's going on. And you're getting to finally fill in all the clues from Ellie's side of the story where you had no idea what the fuck was going on. And you're like, well, why was Abby in a cell at the hospital? What do you mean she escaped? Where is she? Yada, yada, yada. And then when you catch up to Owen and Mel, they're talking about she's on the island. And it's like, what fucking island are we talking about? What? Playing as Abby, I think, was a core part of this story. I don't think you could have told the story as well or have it mean as much without playing as Abby. And then you come back on day 3 and you go to the theater as Abby, and I'm not gonna lie, I thought that was going to be the conclusion of the game. I was even texting a friend of mine and saying that I was almost done. You pull up as Abby, and when the boss fight starts, I realize that you're playing as Abby. And at that moment, I'm sitting there like, oh no, don't tell me. Like, I'd heard the ending was controversial. I didn't know what it was. I managed to go all these years without getting it spoiled for me. I didn't know what the ending was. I heard it was controversial, and I was worried in that moment that I was going to be playing as Abby, killing Ellie. I thought it was going to be the end of the IP right there. And I was like, damn, I got attached to Abby, but I don't know if I could get attached to her enough as like the new IP protagonist to take over as Ellie's spot. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of a crazy reach, don't you think? So you do that boss fight, and that boss fight is super interesting. When a boss fight starts, you don't realize how much you've built up Ellie to where she really is a fucking boss fight. I mean, she's got an arsenal to her, and I don't know how it is on different difficulties and everything. I played it on easy. I ain't gonna lie to you. I just wanted to blast through the game and understand the story so I could watch The Last of Us Season 2. And, I mean, my Ellie was using her Molotovs and her stuns and shooting a shotgun and everything. I was like, damn, she's kind of fucking, not tough, because again, I was playing on easy, but she was a fucking menace, that's for sure. And I was sitting there and I was watching as Abby was strangling Ellie, and I was like, there's no way this is the end. And then she starts fucking like on Dina's face when Dina intervenes, and oh my god, that fight is so fucking good. And I stand to say, if it weren't for Lev, Ellie and Dina were gonna die. I'm sorry. There's just no way. Abby was too much of a fucking workhorse, too much of a goddamn bull for Ellie and Dina to fight against. Even if it was 2-on-1, all hands, they were cooked. They were 100% cooked. Not that I'm partial to Abby in any way, it's just she was built like a fucking linebacker, Like, how are you gonna combat that? Especially with how much she brutalized them with no fucking weapons. Isn't that crazy? But thanks to Lev, they survive, and we get a pretty decent jump forward in time. And it has to be, right? Because, Dina's less than a month pregnant, we would say, or about a month pregnant in the majority of the game. And then all of a sudden, there's a very clearly at least few months old baby, JJ, which I can only assume is Jesse Jr. That's what makes sense. Ellie's snapped arm, which was just fucking brutal to watch. Abby did that shit easily. Like, as easily as you would fucking snap a pencil. Not even a pencil lead. Like, she destroyed her arm. So, definitely a lot of time has passed. I don't quite know how much, and I don't know if there was a way for me to know how much. But, Ellie gets this simple farm life, and it's really nice to see, and it's like, okay, at this moment she has everything she could ever want, but she's still not happy because she doesn't have her closure. And I think she was willing to let it be and leave it alone for the sake of Dina and JJ until Tommy showed up. And Tommy showed up and gave her essentially the keys to the van to go and make the fucking trip happen. You know what I mean? Obviously there was no van and no keys. I'm just making a metaphor here. And I didn't know how long the game was going to keep on going. I'm not going to lie, I was expecting a whole third act at this point. And this is what I would consider to be the epilogue, is after that time skip, after the boss fight. So you go down to Santa Barbara, play first as Abby and Lev, trying to find the Fireflies. They finally figure out where the Fireflies are. And then they get captured by this gang called the Rattlers. Then you play as Ellie, and you come and immediately figure out where Abby was. It was really cool to walk the whole route from Abby and Lev's sailboat to whatever that fucking house was that they went to. It was kind of neat to see that whole route and not have it be like a loading screen or just a little pan skip or whatever you want to call it. But then you go and you hunt down Abby and nobody gets in your fucking way. I'm not great at stealth, I'll be honest with you. There was a lot of stealth portions of this game that ended in combat, and this was one of them. I fucking killed all the goddamn Rattlers. There was not one I left alive. Killed all the Rattlers. Found the prisoners pointed me to where Abby was at, and we get one of the greatest boss fights I've ever witnessed. It was so simple, but it was so good. It was kind of funny. I thought about it in the moment, and I actually chuckled out loud. But it was kind of funny that they had to nerf Abby by making her starved and scrawny and everything for Ellie to have a fair fight like that. If anything, it became a little bit of an unfair fight. But you could still argue it was a fair fight because Abby still kind of whoops ass a little bit. I mean, she hits hard for having, lost most of her strength and muscle mass. And she looks more like a man in that moment. I'm sorry, she had a mannish face for most of the game, and that moment did not help her. Ellie's getting her flashback still, and she gets her fighting with Abby. It's a phenomenal fight, and ultimately Ellie lets her live and lets her leave, which now I understand the controversy. That moment, I kind of expected it, only because I had heard that the ending was controversial. I don't think I would have been ready for that if I played the game off rip before word had gotten around. I was fully expecting Ellie to kill Abby up until I was in that fight, and I was like, wait a minute, okay, I could kind of see where this is about to go, and I'm very interested to see what they do, if they're gonna... I feel like they're gonna make a third game. They definitely left it open, especially with that ending where Dina took JJ and left. Most likely, I'm not gonna lie, they're probably in Jackson. That's my best guess. That's what makes the most sense. Dina lost a set of hands that helped keep the house running and kept everything safe. So she took JJ to where it was safe, back to Jackson, right? But, with this definitive edition or the complete edition or whatever they're releasing of The Last of Us Part 1 and 2, I'm kind of worried because I think Ethan on Everything on TikTok said that almost makes it sound like they're done with the IP, which is scary because that would not be a great point to end off on. That's super open-ended. It doesn't really give any direction. It leaves things open is just the best way to describe that. I don't want to sound like I'm repeating myself, but I am. I'm going to repeat myself. It just leaves shit open. Abby and Lev are most definitely going to the Fireflies, especially now. If they weren't before, for whatever reason, they definitely are now, right? They have nothing else going for them. No, they don't even have equipment. They're starved. They're dying. And then Ellie, I want to say the next thing is she's going to go after Dina and JJ, but I could also see her deciding that, whatever it is about her would be bringing bad around them and she could be going off to do something else. I have no idea. Is the next game going to focus all on Ellie? Is it going to focus on Abby somehow? Is it going to do both of them for whatever reason? I don't know what it would be. I would like to think it's an all Ellie game, but who knows? Either way, it was a phenomenal experience, and you only get to play a game for the first time once, and I'm so glad I finally got to sit down and play the whole thing and enjoy it in its entirety. If you have anything to say, please keep it to yourself because I absolutely hate reading comments. I hope this video has been entirely unhelpful to you, and I hope you have a bad day. Actually, let me back up. So, I think, yeah, it's a PS... Is it? Yeah, it's a PS4 disc. Sorry, I had to get up and physically go check. I couldn't see with my old man eyes. What was her name? Mary, I think? Tommy's wife? You still, whoa, that got really loud for a second. I heard anyway. Is that a fucking ice cream truck? Cream, god damn it, can I talk? I don't know if the mic can hear that. Ellie's snapped arm, which again, I don't know if the mic heard that. My jaw just cracked a lot. Jesus.